Good evening. It now being 6:05 on Wednesday, June 1st of 2022. We're beginning this meeting of the Town Council's Committee on Ordinance and Rules. I would note, obviously, we're meeting in a virtual fashion tonight, so all votes, if taken, will be by roll call. Anyone who'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function. If you have any issues and you're one of our panelists, obviously, you can just raise your hand and wave. Clerk Samina, can we please have a roll call vote to begin the meeting?
Certainly. Councillor Ringus.
Here.
Councillor Hume.
Here.
Councillor Flaherty.
Here.
Councillor Ryan.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. As to approval of minutes, we have no minutes to approve this evening. Moving directly to old business, 22037, Council President Tree Protection Ordinance, or taking up any action relative thereto. Do I have a motion to take off the table order 20037?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councillor Hume, a second by Councillor Ryan. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call vote?
Councillor Ringus.
Aye.
Councillor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councillor Hume.
Aye.
Councillor Ryan.
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
And that is unanimous. We had done an initial first reading of this ordinance at our last meeting of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules. This is a proposal by Council President Borica, who is here with us this evening. She could not make it last time. President Borica, would you like to give an overview of why you propose this and what you're looking to do with this?
Thank you very much, Chairman Ringus, and thank you to the committee for having me here this evening and for taking this under consideration. I have began working on this almost a year ago when it was brought to my attention by some of my constituents that trees had been removed from public ways in District 5 in particular. And as I started researching that concern, I realized that Braintree is a municipality in the state that does not currently have a tree protection ordinance. And as you probably read in the memo and the backup, but just by way of some background, Massachusetts state law does have a tree protection state law called Chapter 87. However, all municipalities have the ability to strengthen that law, and that is the intention of this proposed ordinance. I think what I would like to make sure that the community and the committee I can relay is that my goal here is to make sure that we are conserving Braintree's tree canopy that we have, adding to it where we can, and making this the best possible environmental and beautification effort for the community. So I did a lot of research looking at what other metropolitan, greater Boston metropolitan towns and cities were doing for their tree protection ordinances. And I'm happy to share any of that research with all of you if you're interested. But a lot of the language you'll see in the proposed ordinance is crafted from laws and ordinances that already exist. And I did my best to tailor that in a way that working with Sustainable Braintree, the Gardeners Guild, and a resident who was the city arborist for Quincy, really making sure that the language for Braintree was effective and appropriate. And I also want to mention that I did in the early phases of this project, worked and connected with Bill Batigi, the general manager of Beld, as well as Beld's vegetation management. Trees falling on power lines is one of the #1 sources of power outages. And as we all know, Braintree has the best power company probably in the state, and we never lose power. So protecting our electrical infrastructure with Beld's vegetation management program is something that I wanted to make sure that this ordinance did not disrupt. And I also went back to the electric light board just in the last month and reviewed this again with them to make sure they were comfortable with the language, and received their support at that meeting, as well as General Manager Bill Batigi's. So I would be happy to answer any questions, field any concerns. I have outstanding, in the spirit of transparency, meetings with Mary Beth McGrath, who oversees the building department, as well as Melissa Santucci-Razzi, who oversees the conservation department here in town. So those meetings have yet to be scheduled, and I'll be looking forward to meeting with those department heads. But I will pause, and again, happy to answer any questions or field any discussion. Thank you, Chairman Ringus.
Thank you, President Burke. I would just kind of note, I think you sort of just kind of brought that up there. There are some other stakeholders that there's still going to be some other meetings with, including planning, building, perhaps DPW as well. So I know that there are some other things, and I know that legal is also reviewing the ordinance to make sure that it conforms to all standards that we need it to. But with that said, do I have any questions from members of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules? All right, seeing none.
Well,
Wait.
Sorry, I don't have a question, but just a comment. Yeah, because in talking to Solicitor Taub and Melissa Santucci, there's still some legal review and changes that are going to be coming. So I think just for my purposes, a little premature on doing anything, because it's got to come back with their additional legal review, and Director Santucci-Rossi's review and changes, I believe, are coming as well.
The first pass that Solicitor Huff did provide me with, that this was in harmony with state law, but happy to take that back, and no problem at all.
Yeah, unless I misunderstood them. Sorry, Chairman Ringus. Yep.
Nope. No problem. And Councilor Hume, I don't think we were looking to take any action tonight anyway. This is more for President Boric to introduce where she came up with this, why she came up with it. But there are some other stakeholders that still need to weigh in. And I believe we have, at least I've received, I don't know if that's been distributed yet, Sustainable Braintree has sent over a letter about some possible changes they might want to see. So I think there's still some reviewing to be done. When we have all those stakeholders' opinions in, I think that's when we'll reschedule this back before ONR so that we can weigh in all the stakeholders and the legal opinion. Councillor Flaherty, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity, since we have Director Arsenault here, to ask him if he thinks that there's anything in this tree protection ordinance that the DPW has concerns about, or items in it that they particularly support, or comments to make.
Director Arsenault, I know you weren't sort of on the agenda for tonight, so I don't know if you have remarks prepared, but did you want to respond to that question?
Through the president or the chairperson. Yes, I do have significant concerns about some of the wording that could imply that basically we can't even do work on our roadways, because it has to do with there's different things in there that could be substantially impacting our ability to do our job. Tremendous amounts of, basically we wouldn't be able to do any type of, it would stop all of our resurfacing programs. There's some things in there to do with the tree drip line where you can't do any work under it. That would stop all the resurfacing work. There's some serious concerns we have. We need to sit down and talk about it and make sure that this doesn't stop our ability to do what we need to do. So there are definitely some serious concerns about how this would impact our ability to do our job. That's all I'll say. And I think, like, as was mentioned by Meredith, that we can sit down and talk about those concerns and just make sure that, it does, I'm sure there's very good intentions. I understand that, but we want to make sure we're able to do our job and make the town, work, obviously I agree with protecting trees and all that stuff, but we just have to make sure we don't, it doesn't become more than it was intended to be. That's all. So, okay.
Well, thank you for your comments, Director Arsenault. And I believe that President Boric will be speaking with you as well. So hopefully we can get a lot of people at the table and work out, sort of hash out some of those issues. And when we bring this back up before ONR, we can flesh through some of those. Yep. Thank you for your comments. Councilor Flaherty, do you have anything further before I turn it back?
The only other comment that I have is that we got a letter from Suzanne Brothers describing the value of native plants to the environment and how she feels like some of the language that's in the ordinance can be tightened up to more specifically designate certain native trees. And I guess what I'd like to know is the extent to which that language, if we did, zero in on a smaller number of more native species, what impact would that have on the cost of the program? And is there a Quincy arborist was consulted on this, and I'm wondering if that arborist has any does that arborist concur with those suggestions?
I'll turn that to President Borek. That's a question, I guess, to you, because in your formulation of this, would you like to respond?
Yep, thank you, Councillor Flaherty. First, I just want to say to Director Arsenal, I'm more than happy to meet with you and your staff and 100% support all the work that the DPW does. So I'm confident that we can make sure that this works for the entire community. So rest assured, I will be looking forward to that meeting. No problem whatsoever. I completely understand. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. On the native species, I will have to get back to you, Councillor Flaherty, and I'm happy to either reach out to some of the sources that I've been using. And I think Ms. Brothers also had a resource, I cannot remember the name off the top of my head, but that she had reached out to as well. So let me take that back. And as this moves through the process, and I'm very grateful for the conversation, because I think that's the goal, is to make this the best possible option for Braintree. So let me take that as an action item and come back to the committee if it's okay with the chairman. Thank you. You're on mute, Chairman Ringus.
We'll pretend that didn't happen. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Ringus. I want to thank Council President for bringing this forward. I think that I will never see an ordinance as lovely as a tree. Trees are beautiful, and we need to protect the trees in the town of Braintree. And I think it can help to have clear guidelines on how to handle issues. I've seen a lot of projects in the town. The street right around the corner from me, Elm Lawn, was a beautifully tree-lined street, and it absolutely destroyed the sidewalks, all the trees. So having more guidance with how to handle when we take trees down and how to go about that, I think is a good thing. But I certainly don't want to have any unintended consequences. We're trying to do a good thing, and we end up causing problems, as the DPW director mentioned. So I think we should just really take our time with this and come up with a good product that's going to do what Meredith had intended for it to do. And I think there's no need to rush into that. And trees are beautiful. Trees can cause problems for the town, falling on power lines, root intrusion into our sewer lines, destroying sidewalks. I think I'm hearing an echo now. So let's handle this the right way and take our time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. As a wrap up, President Borek, anything you wanted to add tonight? I know you've sort of been.
I want to thank the committee members for your consideration and conversation. This is, as Councillor Ryan said, this is the point, is to make sure that all the good intentions are able to be brought to fruition. So happy to continue carrying that on and forward. And again, thank you, Chairman Ringus, for keeping this on the agenda for me as we work out the kinks in this process. So appreciate everybody's time.
Okay. Thank you, President Burke. Anything from Councilors Hume, Flaherty, or Ryan to wrap up? Okay, seeing none. We'll definitely get this back on our agenda at some point. We'll let some of those stakeholders weigh in and see what happens. I think our next O&R meeting will have a pretty full agenda based on one item alone. So it'll probably be the meeting after that, I think, that we'll get back to it. But thank you for all the work you're doing on this, and obviously trying to keep Braintree beautiful, and being mindful of just, you know, continuing that community spirit that we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to table order 22037 to a future ordinance and rules meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councillor Hume, a second by Councillor Ryan. Clerk Semino, can I have a roll call vote?
Council Ringus,
Aye.
Council Hume,
Aye.
Council Flaherty,
Aye.
Council Ryan,
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to new business 22015, citizen petition zoning ordinance text amendments, proposed amended article, medical and adult use or non-medical marijuana establishments and related amendments to sections 135-601 and 135-806, or taking up any action relative thereto. With that said, we do have some various folks sort of related to this petition that are present with us. Before we sort of get into the actual presentation, could we just have a quick introduction for those of us and those watching at home of who we are? I see Mr. Doucette. Mr. Doucette, did you want to run the introductions possibly?
Yes, Mark Doucette, citizen petition, CRO for Flower Express. I'll pass it to Drew. She'll pick up the baton from here.
No doubt. Thank you. This is Drew Ledbetter. I am the CEO of Flower Express Bread Genetics, and I have with me Huggins LaFond, our Chief of Cultivation. I go into a little bit more detailed introductions in the presentation, so I'll just allow them to say their names. Huggins, I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving us the time to present to you guys tonight. My name is Huggins LaFond. I'm the Chief of Cultivation.
I think you have to pass the baton now.
Okay, let me see who's who's participating right now. Marquise Cohen.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Marquise Cohen. I am the Flower Express COO, and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it to Adrian.
Good afternoon. My name is Adrian Brown. I am the Chief Scientific Officer for Flower Express, and I will pass it to Karen.
I'm not sure Karen's on, or Leslie. So Leslie and Karen are not on, but I can take it over. Adrian, thank you. I will be doing the presentation that I shared with the planning board. So Councilor Ringus, whenever you are ready, I can start sharing my screen.
Thank you, Drew. We're up whenever you're ready.
Okay, who can share? I think it's asking me to share, adjust the share options. So let me try that one more time. There it goes. I was able to give myself permission. Thank you. Good evening. And again, thank you, committee, for your time and for your attention to this matter tonight. I just want to share with you our citizens petition summary, introduce our company, as well as share the results from our last planning board meeting recommendation, and offer ourselves up to answer any questions that may be outstanding. Let me move this forward. Flower Express was formed in 2021. We're 100% owned by people of color. Our leadership team has over 60 years of experience professionally. And I apologize, I'm fixing my screen here. Our mission is to create and bridge a gap between adult sales, what we call adult sales in the cannabis industry, and medical grade quality cannabis production. So we want to grow medical grade cannabis in a consistent high-tech environment, and want to partner with grow organizations and research organizations, as well as life science companies, to ensure that they're having good quality medical product. We also want to tap into the adult use market because of its profitability. Our values are, of course, integrity. We lead with integrity in everything we do. Environmental sustainability. We believe in community empowerment and fiscal responsibility as well as social equity and social justice. The Flower Express advantage is, of course, we like to highlight our bred genetics portfolio. Our team of scientists in cultivation has been putting together for the last few years a genetics portfolio with over 100 new strains, not previously seen in any cannabis market. So they've been breeding seeds and plants. And we have a proprietary grow technique that allows for maximum plant yield. And we'll be using state-of-the-art vertical grow boxes as well that are armed with artificial intelligence to ensure that we have a consistent output in our plant yield. We've also established some key relationships with some chemists in the FDA, some certified research organizations in Western Mass, as well as other partners in the medical marijuana space. So a more formal introduction of our team is myself, Drew Ledbetter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer. I have been a nurse by trade for the last 18 years. I was born in Venezuela and I grew up in Boston. I went to Boston Latin School. Then I went and got a nursing degree from Boston College, and I'm currently finishing my MBA as well. I worked as a nurse in the ICU at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and then I transitioned to nursing leadership, where I spent the last 12 years of my career before going into healthcare IT. In that space, I found that a lot of the things that are happening, being created for healthcare, are not having the input of healthcare employees. So it really drove my passion to try to connect some of the mainstream industries with the medical space, ensure that we're getting the best resources as well. Huggins LaFond is our Chief of Cultivation. He actually is a real estate developer and a chief cultivator, has been doing this for the last few years. I'm not sure if Huggins, if you wanted to add in a little more background to this or any color. Curly Nicholas is our Chief Financial Officer. He is not with us tonight. He is actually based in Arkansas right now, working with Procter & Gamble. He's the youngest sales director for that company, has an MBA from the University of Arkansas, also grew up in the city of Boston, and is a mentor for the MBA students over at the University of Arkansas Business School. Mark Doucette is our Chief Revenue Officer. He's a resident of Braintree for over 40 years. Mark, you can also chime in and jump in and add any color to your introduction. He's been in the professional space for a very long time and has been our connective tissue when we're putting the community first in Braintree. Karen Chacon, she's our Chief DEI Officer, currently serving as an Executive Director of a nonprofit, Latino STEM Alliance, in the city of Boston. She has over 17 years of Executive Director experience. She's been doing a lot of community outreach, worked for former City Councilor Mike Ross, and has been an Executive Director in the nonprofit space for the last 5 years. Marquise Cohen, our Chief Operating Officer, comes with us with over 15 years of retail management experience, has been in the high-end retail management space for the last 8 years, most recently with Hugo Boss, Dolce & Gabbana, and currently with Acris. Adrian Brown is our Lead Scientific Officer, and by trade spends a lot of time in the marketing and branding space, and has been doing a lot of the work and research in terms of seed hunting and breeding the plants and leading those efforts and creating products for our manufacturing platform as well. Leslie Pasquale is our Chief Technology Officer, also born and raised in Boston, and actually born in Dominican Republic, raised in Boston, also went to Latin school, and has 17 years in the technology space. She spent a lot of time in highly regulated environments, most notably in the New Hampshire lottery, and also helped Curaleaf, which is another big marijuana cannabis company, establish their e-commerce site. And then we have Agnieszka Grosso, our head of brand and creative, who has over 20 years experience in digital marketing and branding, and comes with us with that experience as well, currently working in the healthcare IT space and biotech space. So that's our team. I'm not sure if anybody else wanted to add any introductions before I move on. All right, I'll go ahead and move on. So the cannabis industry in the United States is essentially growing. It's a budding market right now, worth at $61 billion. 13 states are currently legal. It's expected to go up to 15 states by the end of 2022. Actually, since the last 2 weeks, this presentation was updated. 14 states are currently legal, as Rhode Island has joined the ranks. 18% of Americans are active marijuana users, and that's a self-reported number, and that's up from 10% in 2015. And cannabis sales increased 67% in 2020 nationwide. Support for legal marijuana is at an all-time high, and I would say primarily because of all the cutting edge things that are happening in this industry. One of the things that is happening in Massachusetts is that it's a budding industry. And this slide is actually a little older, so I'm going to move and I'm going to reference the numbers in a few slides ahead. But just 2 weeks ago, the sales of marijuana in Massachusetts alone was 2.87 billion. In the United States, they've reached 380, actually in 2022, they've reached over 300 million. They believe that the Massachusetts market is only capturing about 20% of marijuana users, and that we are basically generating over $3 million in sales a day and over $30 million in sales every single week in this state alone. Another thing that is happening is that the medical research industry has tapped into the cannabis industry. Pfizer has made a significant cash investment of $6.7 billion, and they purchased a cannabis research company. There's only 6 cannabis cultivators that are allowed to dispense research grade medical marijuana, and we're working on our CMC to be the 7th for the nation and also for the state. The NFL has awarded over $1 million to study of impact of cannabis and pain management. There's been a lot of research around Crohn's disease, PTSD with veterans, and there's been substantial growth that keeps having folks pour into the medical research space, especially when it comes to cannabis. So these are the most recent numbers. These are from last week in particular. And the reason that we are tapping into the adult use market is because there's a significant profitability difference in both of these markets. If you look at the bottom number, Massachusetts in the last 2 weeks has gone up to 3.03 billion in sales for this, for the mature market that started in 2018. And if you're looking at medical sales only, so these are the medical only dispensaries and wholesalers, they're only at 816.2 million. So that's a significant difference in terms of the profitability for a company. And that's why we want to tap into the adult sales market in addition to creating medical grade cannabis. We want to ensure that we're growing the medical grade cannabis so we can support the medical research and life science sector, but we also want to tap into the profitability of the adult use market. Again, a couple more numbers. These are from last week's. Massachusetts is making over $3 million in sales every weekday. Over the weekend, it can go up to $6 million. As you can see, the second week of May, the 20th, there was $5 million in sales on that one Saturday or that one Friday. Every month, the Massachusetts market has been making over $100 million in cannabis sales. In May, that closed on the 22nd. For these numbers, it stopped at $84 million. So let's talk a little bit about the licensure process in Massachusetts. It's a long process to obtain a cannabis license. Essentially, we have to build a team and secure a location and start engaging with the community. The reason we feel we are going to be successful is because we've done this already and we're just duplicating our efforts here in the eastern part of the state and hopefully in Braintree. Our team has had 2 host community agreements approved in the town of Coleraine in western Massachusetts for cultivation, manufacturing, and delivery. And we have 1 in Boston for retail operations in the city. Essentially, once you've obtained your host community agreement with the town, that kind of dictates how you do business in the town. You still have to go through special permitting and going through that zoning process. And then after you go through that local process, you then have to go to the state and apply through the Cannabis Control Commission. Then you will obtain a provisional license and get the approval to start building out your cannabis facility. And then they will issue a final license in which they will send out inspectors to ensure everything's up to par. And then you will get a commence operations approval. We've gotten pretty far, and we want to show you some of our progress for our farm in western Massachusetts. Our success factors, again, we've done this before. We have a team that is professional, has executed this really well in a very small farming community in Western Mass. We walked in and we retrofitted a barn. We also have special permits in place to ensure that we're getting a successful license. And our license is under review by the state currently. We also are social equity applicants through the Cannabis Control Commission, which gives us expedited application processes and reduced fees. I am a woman, and we are a minority-owned and woman-owned business, which gives us additional benefits and contracts and allows us to tap into resources available for women-owned businesses as well. We believe that the Flower Express leadership team is equipped to produce results and reach all of the necessary milestones to achieve licensure. So what we're proposing and what we requested to the planning board on May 4th is that they change some of the text in their current section 135, article 17, and replace it with allowing of medical and non-medical marijuana establishment use in the highway, business, and commercial zoning districts of the town of Braintree. I'm going to kind of go over some of the wording exactly so you can have it. I believe that the document in the summary may have been sent to your team already. So our proposal was to change the existing wording to allow non-medical marijuana establishments and medical or adult use. By definition, adult use is anybody over the age of 21. Your existing wording would prohibit cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and retail sales. We are asking for the allowed for cultivation, manufacturing, and warehouse storage, but not for retail. Also, we wanted to talk about the definition as defined by the state law. And here there were some comments, and I will talk about the summary comments in the next few slides, but we just wanted to be consistent with what the state considers medical marijuana and marijuana license types. We also have that you have prohibitions, that there's not to be permitted any marijuana establishments, and we're asking again that we be allowed to have cultivation, manufacturing, and delivery. We are not asking for retailers or retail storefronts or any community-facing establishment or zoning amendment. In sections, these would be new sections added to the ordinance. One would define that the submission would require that we do our due diligence. So the town does their due diligence, so we submit our business plans, our licensure, our floor plans, or hours of operation. All these things are also mandated by the state that we do community presentations and abutters meetings. So this would all be in compliance with the state law. 138-1805 would address the buffer zones and the delivery, marketing and delivery hours, and documentation of host community agreements. These are all steps that are again required by the CCC, and they would just be added into the ordinance to ensure that we're consistent and compliant with the state laws. There was also a comment about adding a residential buffer zone, and I think that that was added, and I'll show that in the last few slides. The last section that would be added is 135-1806, and it would define that even if we get through the municipal process and we get the town council's approval for the text amendment, and then we negotiate a host community agreement, we would still have to go through the special permit process, which is the most restrictive permit process for the town. And that would require that we also submit our security plans to fire and police, and any other things that the town of Braintree would want to add at their discretion could be added in this step of the process. We also wanted to add special permit use for the table of principal uses, and this is just for documentation purposes, and the new proposed parking schedule for cultivation and based on canopy space. So the recommendation from Member Crowe, he made a positive motion on May 4th of the Town Council that the text amendment be approved with notes on what other communities do and with the definition clarified as non-retail establishment. They want to make sure that it was very clear in the ordinance that our establishment or the allowed for marijuana zoning would be for cultivation, manufacturing, and not for retail. The final text amendment recommendations were that no property containing marijuana establishment shall be located within 100 feet of any property that contains a residential use. So that is the additional buffer zone in addition to what the state mandates, which is 500 feet from any public or private school and 1/2 mile from any other cannabis establishment. We also add in section 135-1805, which means no property containing a marijuana establishment shall be located within 1/2 mile of any property that contains a marijuana establishment. So that's the buffer zone with the state. And that's just to reiterate that buffer zone addition. And also that they're going to change all the words where marijuana establishment is written to be changed to non-retail marijuana establishment, just to clarify and emphasize that we are not looking to do retail operations, that the ordinance does not allow for retail stores to be present in the town of Braintree. Any questions so far, or actually let's hold questions until I do a little bit of the location overview for you guys so that we can keep the fluidity going. So our proposed location and summary benefits is coming up next. So we would be pursuing a cultivation, product manufacturing, and delivery license types. Cultivation would allow us to have indoor cultivation and would allow us to have a processing facility. Product manufacturing would allow us to then process the plants that we have grown to create byproduct or wholesale products for business to business wholesale interactions. We would also be creating some medical products for business to business wholesale interactions. No one would be able to come to the facility and purchase any marijuana products or marijuana plants. This is not a community facing operations. Even the warehouse for delivery is something that would only be housed at the warehouse. So essentially we would have finished product that we would obtain from other product manufacturers, and we would have an e-commerce site in which people can go online and then make an order, and the delivery will be to their house, to their home if they live in a yes town. What that means for Braintree, since it's still a no town, even after the text amendment is approved, if it is approved, that Braintree would not be impacted in terms of traffic impact, because we would not be able to deliver to Braintree residents, even if the text amendment is approved, because Braintree is still a no town. Our location, our proposed location, we have a letter of intent for 280 Ivory Street. It is an existing 90,000 square foot warehouse. It's known as the Carter Rice Building. It's been vacant for over 25 years. It's in dismal condition, and we are hoping to help beautify it once we secure the necessary approvals. We are not located within a 500 feet of a public or private school. There'll be no cash on site. There'll be no personal transactions on site. And we've partnered with Citronics, who are the leading security operators in Massachusetts for cannabis. They also service hospitals and the MBTA, and they've been doing the cannabis security for the last 4 years in the state. Again, the license types would be delivery operator, so that would be e-commerce only. You can order online and delivery be to your home if you are a yes town. Product manufacturing to allow us to process the flowers that we grow and create products for business to business wholesale interactions, and cultivation, hopefully having 100,000 square feet of canopy space. There will be no retail sales at this location. One of the things that we wanted to really focus on is the impact on the community. And the building is not the most beautiful if you walk by it. I did a community walk with our city councilor, Baraka, and we looked at essentially the walkability path in front of Ivory Street and around District 5. And we talked about increasing the tree canopy in that district and creating a more walkable path to the T station. And also, this is a conceptual future state image on the right, and this is a current state image on the left. Zoning change impact, it would have little to no impact on the current use of the zone. It would be the highway district business zoning only. We will still need a special permit that would allow the town to have complete discretion in where any establishment is allowed, even if this is not our location or if the zoning amendment goes through. And this location is very favorable because it's been vacant for so long, and it's across from this transfer station, which is probably why it's been vacant for so long. The transfer station would not impact our operations, and we would be a closed loop system with HVAC completely internal. There would be no odor escaping from the building and no odor entering the building. So we would not mind having the transfer station across the street. Our other community benefits are, of course, the fiscal benefits to the community by the state. You're allowed to have a cannabis excise tax of 3% of your gross revenue, which can potentially bring over $6 million of revenue to the town of Braintree based on our very conservative projections for our first year of operation. We would also be impacting job creation in the town. Council Flaherty, I know when we talked about this, we talked about what would it take to work here. Braintree does have a lot of people over the age of 21. We would have no minimum education requirement, and we would do on-job training. And there would be 3 workday shifts and over 200 positions spread out over those 3 workday shifts. We would also have over 180 parking spaces, and we would have incentivized, subsidized T-passes, as well as other modes of transportations and memberships for our employees. We also want to create a fund with significant philanthropic investment to support community improvement efforts. We know that there's a lot of things that need fixing and that require funding, and we want to add an additional percentage of our profits and create a fund that is wholly run by Town of Braintree residents and stakeholders. We would facilitate board creation, and the town would have majority of the board seats and would be able to vote on how these additional funds are spent within the community. Other concerns that have come up in our conversations with the community were traffic. We don't believe that it would have significant impact on traffic, as deliveries cannot be done in the town of Braintree. Orders would be coming in via a computer program. Our cars will be exiting out of the facility and getting directly on the highway to perform their deliveries and be coming back after the business day has ended. We would have code conforming lighting to minimize nuisance. We want to definitely increase the tree canopy in District 5, as it's one of the districts with the lowest tree canopy in Braintree. And we also want to create a comprehensive education plan and support the work of the established addiction prevention efforts that are already happening in the community. We've already partnered with some experts in the field that have talked about addiction prevention and added them to our team to help us better understand how we can best help and educate and support the efforts that are currently happening in the town of Braintree. So our request was to allow us to have the highway business and commercial zoning areas text amendment to be changed to allow for cultivation, allow for product manufacturing, and allow for home delivery to yes towns. No retail sales would happen in Braintree, and no home deliveries would be allowed in Braintree unless Braintree opted in to be a yes town in the future. So we would be bringing to the town of Braintree a modern facility, exclusive genetics, and what I call the dream team. The planning board made a recommendation to the town to that the amendment be approved. It was a 4-to-1 vote, and they have forwarded us over to your subcommittee for additional questions and community outreach, and so that we can answer any concerns or continue on our path to hopefully getting the text amendment and the ordinance changed over. And that is the end of my presentation. Do we have any questions at the moment?
Thank you, Drew, for that thorough presentation. I know you did it for the planning board a week and a half or so ago, so thank you for being before a lot of information, plus some of the updates based on some of the comments you got at the planning board meeting. Before we get into sort of questions, there's a couple things I just wanted to preface, and you hit them on the head a couple of times, but I want to sort of continue to nail those down. So just so folks at home and who are paying attention to this issue are aware, again, nothing within any proposed changes here would affect retail sales in the town of Braintree. This is solely, and also home delivery, so long as Braintree is not a yes town. And I think that's an issue that is people are beginning to look at and bring up. It was obviously an issue that we've dealt with in the past because we've dealt with this issue in the town council in prior years. So there's nothing at all that would propose any sort of retail sales. And I think that's important to note as we look at this. A couple other things I want to note just for members of ONR. If you haven't received them yet, it was referenced in the presentation. You should have received from Melissa Santucci-Rossi, dated May 31st, 2022, a planning board recommendation, which was referenced throughout the presentation. Additionally, I don't know if it's been distributed yet. We did receive a letter from the Braintree Board of Health. I would note that the Braintree Board of Health, composed of Chairman Bergoli, Vice Chairman Nettleman, and Juliana Melchionda, in their letter is objecting to changes that are being proposed to the zoning ordinance. There was a favorable recommendation from the planning board. There was also noted in the planning board recommendation was that there was comments from both our fire chief and police chief. Clerk Semina was able to track that down for me today, and basically there are no objections as to the proposed changes from either the police chief or from the fire chief. And finally, I just want to reference so that we're all aware, and I know there's a lot of people that are watching, we did have a town election in 2016 that regarded question 4 in that election was as to sales of marijuana in the town of Braintree, both retail sales, delivery, cultivation. And although the state of Massachusetts did approve an increased sales of marijuana, the town of Braintree in that 2016 election did vote against it. There was 10,985 folks that voted against it, 9,251 people who voted for it. In all but 3 of our precincts, it was defeated. So I think that's just some historical reference. It did come before the town council, and we voted to uphold any sort of marijuana ban. So that is sort of the historical sort of piece of this. We have some recommendations that have come in from some various folks that we have to consider. The last thing I want to say before I start opening this up for questions is tonight was sort of an informational session for us to sort of get this presentation. I'm sure some of the councils will have some questions. We do have an O&R meeting scheduled for June 22nd, which will be a live meeting. And I will be taking hopefully some of the stakeholders that we've mentioned may be able to come in person and sort of testify before us. But additionally, there will be some public commentary allowed as well. So folks who are watching at home, who have some questions, of course, could come to that meeting and offer some public comment. And I would also always say, reach out to your district councilor or your councilors at large with any issues, questions that you have, and we will ensure that those questions get asked as well. So with that said, do any of the members of the Committee on Ordinance and Rules have any questions tonight? Councilor Hume.
I do, and sorry, my raise hand feature is not working. Thank you, Drew, for that presentation. As Chairman Rengus mentioned, I was going to mention in 2016, Braintree did vote no on question 4, which was legalizing marijuana. I, at the time, served as the vice chair of the Braintree Community Partnership on Substance Use and led the charge for the vote no on 4. There was a group of us who did that. So this is a difficult topic for me. I will say that. I do have one. Can we get a copy of that presentation you gave tonight? Is that
Absolutely.
possible? Okay, great. I, as well as others in the past who were on the partnership and some council members, had the opportunity to tour Airmont, which is in Quincy, several years back. And I know you mentioned odor. There's a very distinct odor when you drive up towards Airmont. What's the difference between your facility and Airmont? And you mentioned the HVAC system. How is it not going to be out in the air? Like, do smell of it?
I will let Huggins jump in on that part, but my understanding is the Quincy facility that was toured was a medical only facility that was put together I would say with people don't put a lot of capital into medical facilities because they don't make a lot of profit. So there's a lot of times that there's not an opportunity for a significant investment in the things that will keep and maintain the facility as a closed facility. So that would be my comment in terms of that facility. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't know them personally, but that is my understanding. And the other thing would be, Huggins, you can jump in and talk about our systems that we're going to put into the facility.
Sure.
Just before Mr. LaFont speaks, just so we can keep the conversation cycling, the way we can do this is if a counselor asks a question, Drew, if you want to, kind of what you just did, if you want to initially take the question, and if one of the members of your team is the better person to answer that question, you can sort of tag them in. But I'll have the counselors just ask the questions directly that way. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. LaFont. You can. continue.
No worries. Thank you, Dave. Things have changed since the laws came into effect. Cannabis is an emerging industry that has had a lot of research and development invested in the space. As a result, a lot of ancillary businesses that support cannabis have come online to develop new technologies. So these new technologies have been leagues of improvement, since this industry's infancy. So in terms of air purification, we are using pretty much hospital grade air purification, air circulation, as well as the air return. So, like what fumes that the building will be exhausting will actually run through a massive carbon filter. Every flower room will pretty much be able to capture that smell, run it through carbon before it's exhaust outside, as well as all the air that's inside the building will be cycled several times a minute, inside the space. It's not only good for the public outside, but it's also, very healthy for the flowers to have no microbials inside the facility, no bacteria or any funguses. So air quality is something that is paramount to what we're trying to deploy here. We're really focused on being lab grade, medical grade quality cannabis. So as a result, we're doing a massive infrastructure upgrade inside of the Carter Rice building, if that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor Hume.
Yeah. All right. How about in terms of safety? What safety protocols will you have in place? And is there any extraction of the oil in this facility? Flammability, all that I don't know who can address all that.
So I can talk about physical building safety, and I'll let Huggins talk about the extraction safety and the equipment safety. So I'll go ahead and talk about the physical safety of the building. Massachusetts has created laws and rules for this industry that are make most marijuana establishments safer than most banks. We have to have 24-hour surveillance. We have to have up to 3 months of camera surveillance footage available. We will have over 50 cameras on the exterior of the building alone. Our security vendor, Citronics, is leading in this space, and they've created a security plan for us externally. The first 90 days of operation, we will also have additional security outside just in case anything were to happen, or deliveries or any mishaps, just to ensure that we're rolling this out smoothly and we don't have any concerns, and that the community feels safe. So in terms of outside and inside security of the facility, we would have panic buttons, controlled entry and access. Our vault would need dual multi-factor authentication access. All employee badges and all the doors will be accessed through employee badges as well. So it's all secure access into the facility and out of the facility. Visitors will be logged in and checked in and with ID, and they would have to, of course, also have vendor verification done prior to accessing the site. In terms of security of the equipment, Huggins, I'm going to tap you in again, and you can talk about the cultivation operations.
Thank you, Drew. So just one thing I want to add to our security plan. The cameras that are used inside the facility are actually, a few of them will be called what we consider bomb-proof cameras. So these cameras can survive an explosion. So pretty much, to be able to capture footage throughout the entire process. That's how strict and stringent the security protocols are for cannabis, businesses. In terms of us processing products on site, that was a great question about, hazards and so forth. The equipment that we will be using inside the building, especially inside the manufacturing section of the building, are required for us to use what we call a C1D1 room. It's actually a bomb-proof room that's built inside the facility. So wherever equipment that will be processing, butane or, doing any kind of, like extraction process, will be inside of a C1D1 room that in itself is bomb-proof. So, and of course, besides it being bomb-proof, that particular room that's built for the extraction equipment also does have sprinklers, and there, of course, will be sprinklers throughout the facility as well. So a lot of safeguards are put in place to mitigate, any type of disaster or things that can go wrong on site.
And we chose Sectronics. I want to just add and highlight that we chose Sectronics because they are the security vendors for the MBTA. They have ambulance companies as well as multiple police departments in the state, as well as a lot of the beaches in New Hampshire.
Thank you. Councilor Hume?
So to follow up with that, so if an explosion were to happen within that room, it would be self-contained? Is that accurate?
That's correct. It would be self-contained inside of that room.
Okay, is that a new feature over the past years in terms of the safeguard and standards that have been put in place?
Yeah, I mean, like this is a very fluid industry right now. It's in its infancy, as states are legalizing and, coming online, a lot of technology is being developed, so a lot of the pitfalls or the errors that have happened with other cannabis companies that have come to market, any disasters that have happened, they've, pretty much tried to find a way to mitigate that. I think that Massachusetts did a very great and comprehensive job, the CCC, of putting together, best practices and guidances for us, as well as the constant evolution in the space. So, I think that having the C1D1 room, in my opinion, as a real estate developer, is not overkill. I think it's completely necessary. And it pretty much safeguards not only the building, but the staff. So, we want to have an environment where the staff is safe and they're in a great environment to work in, and as a result of us protecting our staff, that also means, public safety as well.
Okay. And then you talked about traffic and that you won't be increasing the traffic, but what about the delivery trucks? Because I saw multiple days in there, like what hours of operation will those delivery trucks be coming in and out of there? And are they going to come out of the facility and only go left, or are they going to go right into Braintree?
So we have not ironed out the exact traffic pattern for those delivery trucks. Eagle Eye Transport is a Cannabis Control Commission certified transporter for the state. They will be doing our wholesale transporting. They don't have any vehicles. All of their vehicles are the size of armored trucks. They don't have 18-wheelers or big trucks. There is a guidance on how much cannabis you can actually transport at a time in one vehicle, so that because of that, the vehicle sizes have remained relatively small. In terms of home delivery, we will be starting with just 5 vehicles, and we're doing e-commerce, so our orders would be going out before the morning traffic, straight out towards the highway tour, and we would have route optimization by OnFleet, who is our technology partner for our route optimization, but also we wouldn't have anybody turning into Braintree. That is something that could be defined in our host community agreement. It could be defined in our special permit process. We would essentially adjust to whatever criteria is set forth by the term.
Okay. And then I believe on page 8 of your presentation, you have medical sales are unable to keep up. What did you mean by that? With the demand? Is that what that was referring to?
Well, yeah, that's in terms of supply and demand, medical sales require that people access the healthcare system, obtain a medical card, and then maybe give up some other, I would say, rights. If you have a medical card, you cannot have a license to carry, and a lot of people are not willing to switch those out for the other, especially if there's an adult use market. Also, the adult use market allows people who are not quite sure if they're if cannabis-based medicine is their path. It allows them to dabble and do their own research before fully committing to a full medical path in the cannabis space. And it's just been a lot more profitable. It makes 4 times more revenue than the medical industry. And that is a lot of reasons why a lot of medical businesses are switching over to adult use as well, just to be able to actually survive. A lot of the medical cultivation facilities are not doing well, and it's because they don't have access to the adult use market.
Okay. So you also mentioned 3% of gross revenue projected for Braintree would be about $6 million. What's that based on?
So I can talk about it unless Suggsy want to tap in. We did a little bit of a very conservative projection. We looked at our canopy size, our vertical farming units, and how many plants could each be grown on each unit. our average plant yield and the average cost of this flower, wholesale business to business. Then we took that number and cut it in half and saying, let's say if we only have 50% of our crop that actually survives and makes it out, and let's say the prices drop 50% in the next 12 months, which is very unlikely, but we wanted to be conservative. Based on the size of the facility, our canopy size, and the amount of harvest we plan on having each year, based on our grow techniques, we anticipated gross revenue close to $200 million a year in wholesale. And that would give the town of Braintree 3% of the gross revenue as tax income.
Okay, so of that equation, I'll say, where does the customer demand play into that? So you know what you can grow with your facility and all that. How do you get your customer base, and how's the demand determined to get to that number?
So our customer base is actually other businesses. So we will be producing flower and distillate. So we will be extracting cannabis oil and selling to other product manufacturers. Currently, there is a big bottleneck in the industry where there's not enough cultivation facilities to actually meet the demand. So the price of flower is very high in the state of Massachusetts, more than other emerging markets. Because of that, we would actually alleviate some of the supply chain issues in the cannabis industry, and we would be selling to other businesses as well as other storefronts.
Okay. Two more questions, if I may, Chairman Reagan.
Of course.
You talked about employment. Will there be any preference to Braintree residents for employment?
Yes, Braintree residents would have priority in terms of employment. That is something that we're very adamant about when we enter any community. We want to have hiring priority. We want to make sure that all the benefits stay local. You guys are having the most impact in terms of your quality of life and what's happening around you. So I think Braintree residents should absolutely have priority in hiring and have the most positive benefit from a facility like this coming to your community.
And if this goes forward, how would you reach out to Braintree residents for like job postings, whatnot? What would be
we would work the channels within Braintree. Mark Doucette's been, like I said, the vein of our community relations. We would, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. We would tap into whoever is already reaching and doing outreach in Braintree. We would have our job postings happen in Braintree first for at least 2 weeks before we open them up to anybody else outside of Braintree. We would ensure that Braintree residents had priority as well.
Okay. Sorry, two more. I will say this facility, the location you chose has been vacant for many. I've lived in Braintree since 1981, and it is not a desirable location for just about any business. So the fact that a business is interested, that's a positive to me. But as I said in the beginning, this is very difficult to me. So I'm going to leave you with this last question, and I know we're not voting on this tonight, so I'm going to have more for next week. You gave a great presentation. If you could sum it up briefly, like, why is this in the best interest of Braintree? What is the best thing? Why should we all be voting for this?
I want to start, but I want to let Mark finish this. If you don't want to tap in to answer that. I think that as the industry emerged and when the vote happened in 2016, a lot of people were very concerned about what the rollout would be like. Massachusetts has been responsive. The Cannabis Control Commission is very engaged with the community, with legislators. They've created an opportunity for towns to generate really good tax revenue and benefit from the revenue that is happening in this space. And it would be an opportunity for Braintree to have access to that tax revenue without having the community impact of having a retail facility or a community facing facility in their town. I know, Mark, you can add a little more color to that because you're the reason we're in Braintree. Our team was looking for a second location to expand to, and Mark was able to sell the town of Braintree very well. So I think he can best speak to this. You're on mute, Mark.
Thank you. First of all, this is no retail, no access. You know, I've done a lot of work on this and I was a no person myself. But I myself, I've seen what medical marijuana can do for a lot of people. as far as cancer patients and people with seizure disorders. And I've done a lot of research on that. And that's why we're going to go right after the medical research facility. And that'll be part of my job as the CRO, is to bring that medical research, because this particular product meets this guidelines that they have to have, and they can't get enough of this product to do the research they need. Let's face it, we're a year or 2 or 3 away from a financial crisis. I grew up in Braintree since I was 15, and I had the benefits of all the programs my kids did and I did of having a great town. Those programs are going to get diminished. We have an opportunity here to put in a no access, no C, turn a facility around that has been, less than desirable, in a place where, let's face it, no one wants to be next to the transfer station. And we're a closed facility. And so we're going to take something that can't happen into something that can happen. We're going to take a product that every single town around us wants. Every single town around us wants. And I'm fighting hard to bring it here because we want the benefit of it. It is, I was doing math the other day with someone. In order to raise this kind of revenue, we would have to build 12,000 homes. 12,000 homes with 36,000 people, 36,000 cars, 36,000 kids going into the school system, 36,000 people on the electricity. This facility, it'll be 200 jobs, no impact to the town except for the revenue coming in. And our host community-based agreement is an opportunity for us to work out those take a left only kinks. Once the facility is up and running, the green space in front is going to block it. When you're driving down the street, you're not going to know it's there. But when you go to the schools and you go to these programs and they have an influx of money, and these kids after COVID, let's face it, a lot of them need services, and those services can't happen without money. And maybe I'm forecasting 2 or 3 years away, but I know it's happening, and I see it happening in my own family. So as a former no person, as a person who the town has personally helped, this is why I'm here. So, I went through some of the things there. 70% of the jobs will go to Braintree residents, and that'll be part of a group of us to make sure that happens. And there'll be great paying jobs, and there'll be skilled jobs right now that are in high demand, like tech jobs. This is definitely a betterment from our community, and our community is nearing a fiscal crisis. And we all know it's happening. Wait till you see the budget. And maybe not this year, but next year, the year after. And our facility will come online just in time to meet the demand of the town. We need to get there. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Mark. Councilor Hume, anything to wrap up?
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate all your comments and the fact that you're from Braintree. That speaks volumes to me, that you're basically working, representing to this. So that weighs, I take that very seriously, because there's many times companies and individuals who's come before us and they don't care about Braintree. So you get Braintree, you get the Braintree way. If you live in Braintree, people know there's no other community like Braintree. And I say that, I've lived here, I raised my family here, I chose to live here, I chose to stay here. I love this community. There's so many residents here. We are a special community. So that means a lot to me. And Drew and your team, I thank you for this thorough presentation, and you had all the answers, and not everybody has answers to all the questions, and I do appreciate that. And I have a lot to think about, but I am appreciative of all the work and the presentation, and grateful for all the thoughtful answers. And again, Mark, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Ringus.
Thank you, Councilor Hume. I see that both of the other members have their hands up, but I believe Councilor Ryan had his hand up first. So Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Chairman Ringus. I have a few follow-up questions. On the traffic, you mentioned that, you don't have a firm traffic program. When I talk to the residents, it's like a restaurant location in Braintree. It's traffic. So I'd like to see some plan that really has the traffic taking a left out of the facility and going on the highway and not cutting through Braintree. So that's something I'd like to see. And you don't have to answer now, but I'd like to see that.
Can I just clarify something?
Chime in for good.
We're talking 10 to 20 vehicles, not every day. So our impact is very low. We get full blown, maybe towards 20 vehicles, but there's no business in Braintree. We don't deliver to Braintree. We don't sell in Braintree. Our facility is closed. It's behind the scenes. No one can get there. We come out of the facility. We take a left. We take a right. We take a left at the light, and we get on the highway and leave. That's the traffic pattern that we'll have. We won't be taking a right and going to Braintree because we have no business to.
Yep, I'd like to see that firmed up.
Sure,
That's the intention for the vehicles entering and leaving the facility. On the odor control system, the HVAC system for the facility, you mentioned that it's going to be activated carbon. Maybe understanding that a little better and explaining that a little more in detail. The activated carbon system, I have half a dozen facilities that I manage that have activated carbon that I could fill my house with all the carbon that I have. And you need to have a good program in place to test the carbon and make sure you're replacing it as needed, and maybe understanding that a little more at the next presentation, giving an example of what type of systems would be in there. I don't know if you're going to have HEPA filters in line as well, but I'd like to understand that a little more, the odor control system and the nature of that. You folks also mentioned the C1, D1, which I assume you're saying class 1, div 1, which is really just explosion proof electrical equipment in the production room, I guess. I don't know if I'm calling that correctly. I'd like to understand that a little better too. For the class 1, div 1, that just means it's explosion proof to me. And I'm sure you're talking about specific areas of the facility where you're going to have the production in place. Is that for what part of the facility would be class 1? What are you doing in those areas?
Is that a question you'd like answered right now?
No, I'd like to understand.
Okay. No, I can add it to the presentation as well. We probably will have a little bit more of a floor plan to share as well. And we will, I've tapped in to have our HVAC person join us in our next meeting as well.
Okay. And then when you mentioned explosion proof, that's class 1, div 1, but I don't know if you had any types of systems in place if there was a fire, if you have anything like a halon system or something to displace the atmosphere. If there is a fire, is that part of the proposed system?
Yes, it will be. It will be.
Okay. So I know halon systems are being replaced with something that is less dangerous to the occupants of the building. So I'd like to understand that as well. I also had questions on the type of utilities, the usage you're going to have. Water, is this a very high use for water, this facility? Electricity, if you could speak to that, maybe?
Sure. So we're actually dealing with Beld, Braintree's electric company right now in terms of determining how we roll out our sustainability program, because cannabis cultivation is very energy intensive. So it uses a lot of water and it uses a lot of power. So we were planning on having a footprint of power on the roof. And we're in some discussions on whether or not that's before the meter, after the meter, if the town is going to lease the panels from us. That stuff we're still working out, in terms of our power footprint. But in terms of how we're going to be sustainable inside the facility, we're using all of our equipment will be beyond Energy Star compliant. So all of our lighting will be LED lighting throughout the building. Even the grow lights that we're using for the actual plants will be LEDs. We will have a complete microcontroller to manage all the power consumption in the room. So we'll be able to know, what our peaks look like, what our consumption looks like, and also our water will be in a closed loop system. So once the water comes into the building, it will be able to be utilized, run through a filtration system to do, reverse osmosis, and then utilized again. So we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. I'm a smart home builder. in my life, I tried really hard to bring, like smart home development to the forefront, solar panels on the roof and, like backup batteries and, just everything automated. And, I was pretty much, like somebody on an island for a very long time. Now you see smart home everything. You see everybody's trying to be as compliant as possible. And I think that, like Boston just rolled out one of the most, comprehensive carbon, reduction plans for homeowners that, that I've seen in the nation. So, this is at the forefront of us rolling out the building. We don't want to just come to Braintree and to just, put a business there that will produce, jobs and revenue. I'm trying to leave a future for my children, and that means that we are fiscally responsible and we are sustainable. That means that, what we're taking and drawing from the planet, that we are doing as much good, so we're trying to do it as sustainable as possible with the most minimal footprint we can, like we're striving on this project to be a LEED Platinum, certified building. So which means that we are trying to go above and beyond all of the Energy Star compliance, that's available on the marketplace.
So are you going to have solar power as part of this facility?
Yes, so we will have solar power. Like I said, our conversations with BELD are really premature right now in terms of figuring out exactly how that's integrated. If the town takes the power and then, leases it back to us at a discount, we don't know exactly how that works, but we will be rolling out solar. We also have a thermal capturing. So some of our components in the nursery that produce heat, we will, like have a heat exchanger to recirculate that heat that would be exhausted out instead and recirculate it back into the property. So, anything that we can do to, to pretty much capture and save and reduce costs, reduce our footprint, we will incorporate. And also, we don't know everything. So this is a conversation that we want to be, completely open with the town. If there's anyone that knows more or, can contribute to helping us be this, be even more sustainable than we want to be, we're completely open to that dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know enough a little bit. I know enough to be dangerous. I'm a mechanical engineer and I'm in the environmental field, and I know about uninterruptible power supplies, and you mentioned that. And I'm wondering, are you going to have any backup battery power besides UPSs that would help you peak shave? I don't know if you mentioned that.
100%. So these facilities, the flower is everything. So if power goes out or something happens, 6 to 8 hours could be devastating. So which means that having like the whisper quiet generators or having battery backup is going to be critical to our infrastructure. That is definitely at the top of the list.
Well, I'm glad you said whisper, the backup, the facility generator power, because we don't want to have a noisy generator down there and be have an unintended consequence of noise pollution down there. It smells enough down there with the transfer station, and won't have any noise. So these are all the kinds of things I'd like to see more information on. That this is a good part of this project. That I think we need to understand the power, the water consumption, the water recycling, reverse osmosis, high polishing filters. If you have those, that's all stuff I'm interested in hearing as well. So that's great. And then the commitment for employment for the folks in Braintree. I think I'd like to see you make a strong commitment. I know you mentioned that's something you want to do. I'd like to see you make a commitment. I don't know how we could go about doing that, but I think if a lot of these positions can go to Braintree folks, I think that would be a very important part of this project as well.
Councilor Ryan, we actually would have to have it in writing for the Cannabis Control Commission as part of our state application. Our community impact plan needs to be documented, and the metrics will be reviewed every year, and that would depend on whether our license is renewed or not. So we can include that in writing as part of our community impact plan, not only to hold ourselves accountable, but the CCC will also hold us accountable to those metrics.
Right, because I think that would be important for the town of Braintree. I've been in Braintree for about 27 years now, but I grew up in Boston, and I went to Boston Latin. I was But I was the kid on the left.
Oh, I was the kid on the left, and then I graduated class president, if that makes you feel any better.
I know you graduated class president because my friend George McAvoy told me that you graduated class president. So I did a little research there. But
nice things.
So I think this was a very good presentation, and I think it's we have a pretty important decision to make for the town of Braintree, and I want to thank you for answering the questions and taking these additional questions that we have and coming back with more information would help me make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. Honestly, Councilor Hume and Councilor Ryan knocked out most of my questions. So I'm going to just add, I'm trying to understand more about the traffic impact. And I realize that, Councilor Ryan has already asked for more details in the future and you don't have everything mapped out yet. However, it sounds to me like you have plans to truck shipments to laboratories and you have plans to truck shipments to other storefronts, but you also have plans to do delivery to yes towns. And when you say that, do you mean like pizza delivery or DoorDash, or do you mean like, how would that work? Is that delivery to home delivery?
Can I take this one, Drew?
Hold on, wait, was that you, Huggins?
Yeah, that's me.
Do you mind if I go over the ordinance piece and then you can tap in after?
Sure, no problem.
Absolutely. So the rules for the legislature, we cannot carry more than $10,000 worth of cannabis in a truck. So these would be like Brinks trucks, like they're money trucks. They're all smaller. They actually, a lot of the Eagle Eye transport vans are like those Mercedes transport vans. They're just armored and secured. And that would be for delivery of the wholesale. And I'll let Huggins kind of tap in on the tail end for that piece in the terms of business to business interactions. For the home deliveries, this would be e-commerce. We would be starting with cars or like Ford Escapes. We're looking at sustainable vehicles as well, at hybrids, hopefully getting some electric vehicles as well. And those would be coming out. And also I would say it would be more like Amazon delivery. Like you go online, you put in an order, and magically 2 people, not a box shows up to your door, but 2 people, both with body cams, a car that is secured with front and rear cameras, and monitoring. And then people will have to get their ID scanned at their door, signed for their product, and then it would get handed to them. And then it would be an unmarked vehicle. And we have to have 2 drivers, both with body cams on at all times. So that's the regulatory side. Huggins, you can go ahead and tap in on the rest of that question.
Sure. So I just wanted to address a few things. So just to, have people understand exactly what we mean by minimal traffic impact. So we're right next door to the T. We're going to encourage most of the people that work inside the facility to either bike to work or commute. We will have a subsidized, MBTA passes for everyone who works on site. That way we're minimizing the amount of vehicles that are coming in and out. The second thing is that our harvests are not daily. These are plants that they need time to grow and to go through a curing and processing process. So our deliveries are not going out daily. Deliveries are maybe going out bi-weekly or maybe once a month, as product is harvested, processed, packaged, and then it would go out. And, and when flower goes out, it'll go out to all of our vendors, and then the process would start all over again. So the most traffic that we would see coming into the facility is more destination traffic. It's the people that work there, the executive team, the cultivation team, the manufacturing team will be coming on site. We're trying to reduce that by incentivizing further our staff to commute in or to ride a bike, for those who can. So since our target is to have 70% local Braintree residents, that will further reduce the amount of traffic that comes through. And like Drew was saying, with the delivery that goes to the consumer, those deliveries are pretty much like the day before you would go ahead and place an order. We wouldn't fulfill it that day. We would send out the fleet in the morning. So which means that when the orders come in, those orders would get filled and then the fleet would go out. in the morning and it would return at night. So it's not like the fleet would go out like a pizza guy, go out and do a delivery, then come back to the facility and pick up more product and then go back out. We're going to send out the drivers with all of the product they need to fulfill their deliveries that day. On Fleet is doing our route optimization to make sure that our carbon footprint is efficient, that we're not, like having cars idle or, release like carbon emissions unnecessarily. So it's a controlled flow of traffic. Morning time is the only time that fleet will leave the building. Our delivery trucks will be even less frequent. It will be only when product is fully harvested, processed, packaged, and then shipped out, just to give you a better idea of the traffic patterns.
Councilor Flaherty, anything further?
No, that does help. I have a series of questions concerning the language of the ordinance itself, but I think I'm going to hold off on those until we have a member of the planning department with us. So that is all I have for today.
Thank you. Councilor Hume or Ryan, anything further? Being none. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys, Drew, Mark, and Huggins, and the rest of your team for coming in tonight. Obviously, a very thorough presentation. As Councilor Hume indicated, a significant amount of materials for us to process through, and we have some serious considerations to make. I think someone within the presentation noted the fiscal piece of this. We had a town council meeting last night where we went over a budget, and obviously there are tough times ahead for a lot of municipalities, and this is a way to generate revenues. And as we all said last night, that we have to find ways to generate revenue. We can't say no to everything. There has to be a mixing of different ways to increase revenues for our schools and our services. But we also have to be mindful of our residents and what they want to see come into the town. So I think it is going to be incumbent upon us to ensure that residents are getting this information pushed out to them, and to be cognizant of questions and concerns that they have. So with that said, I will just note again that our next O&R meeting on this issue will be on June 22nd. And clerks, that will be in the Cahill Auditorium. And BCAM will be available to televise that as well.
Correct.
So we will be looking to have some of these stakeholders that have provided some of this information to us present. And it will be time for residents to make their thoughts and feelings known as well. So I think I look forward to that conversation, and I look forward to some of the answers to some of the questions that were posed by the councilors. A lot from Councilor Ryan, obviously, given his breadth of experience. If we see further answers to those, and sort of development of the answers to some of his questions. So thank you to everyone, and I look forward to continued conversation on this issue. With that said, we are tabling this to a future O&R. Drew, I see your hand is up. Did you want to say something further?
Yes, I just want to say one final thing. I would say that if any of the counselors have any additional questions or they have any groups that they'd like to meet before the next meeting, or anybody who they suggest that we spend some time with and have conversations and help understand their concerns, we are absolutely open to that. I've sent a few emails to some of the counselors. I'm not sure if I'm going to spam, but I'd love to meet with as many people and talk to as many people to make sure that everybody's questions are answered. And if there's anything that we need to input into our business plan, that we do that early on.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that said, do I have a motion to table order 22015?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilor Ryan.
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call vote to table to a future meeting?
Councilor Ringus.
Aye.
Councilor Hume.
Aye.
Councilor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilor Ryan.
Aye.
All in favor.
And I do believe, I think I saw a message just come in tonight. Just so we know, there's not going to be questions from the public tonight. We will be questions and answers at our live meeting on June 22nd. And I don't know if I noted that yet, but that is at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock start time. So with that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Clerk Samir, can we have a roll call vote?
Council Ringus,
Aye.
Council Hume,
Aye.
Council Flaherty. I think she was having some internet problems.
She looks pretty frozen
I
today.
think she's saying yes. Council Ryan,
Aye.
all in favor to adjourn.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, council, for your time.